So today is World Tourism Resilience Day, and Nigeria is one destination in case you're looking for where to go holiday, to go vacation. Nigeria has many tourist centers, many tourist spots. We'll fill you in on that and let you know some of the places you can visit if you want to tour in Nigeria. To look at World Tourism Resilience Day, we have Adedayo Adesugba, who is the Vice President, Association of Tourism and Hospitality Consultants in Nigeria, AFCON. Good morning, sir. Many thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
If we're talking about tourism, I had already done some marketing right now and also bragged about the fact that when it comes to tourism, Nigeria has many tour sites that would be attractive to any tourist looking to just see the world, looking to see Africa and Nigeria. But when we're talking about resilience, now that could also mean that for tourism or for the tour sector, it needs to be resilient in order to continue striving. Let's look at what it is in Africa today when we talk about tourism.
We know traditionally that Africa is a tourist major tourist destination globally. And for certain reasons, first and foremost, the weather is pretty good. And then again, even at this time when in the Western world, up north, it's very cold right now. So this is the time most of them will go on vacation and they're seeking for tourist enclaves. And of course, we know that we have very good weather, so they fly down south. In particular, South Africa, the East Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, of course, Rwanda is now coming on the map. Ethiopia is doing well. North Africa is also doing well. Morocco is a primary tourist destination now. And West Africa, we're beginning to see the numbers in West Africa. Traditionally, the Gambia has always attracted tourists from up north and from some other areas. Senegal is really fighting now for tourist arrivals, increased tourist arrivals, Dakar. Of course, Cote d'Ivoire is also developing pretty fast. Ghana has done well in a few years before now, and even now with the diaspora market. And so they are doing pretty well. So Nigeria definitely cannot be left behind. So Africa is looking good when we're looking at tourist numbers. Of course, it's still a bit not where it's supposed to be compared to other countries or other places where people will normally go. Paris is the most visited city in the whole world. So we are getting the numbers where it's going up. So it's looking good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adedayo. Now, I heard when you were making references to other countries, like they are trying when it comes to tourism, and this is the time for those who are in Europe to come down to Africa to have some form of tourist attraction. We know that South Africa and some of the Eastern African countries, as they've served as quite a very good destination for tourism activities. But when you mention the issue about tourism in Nigeria, people will begin to ask a question. They impose this face on this inquisitive look at you and like, okay, tourism in Nigeria, where are we going to? So where are the tourist hotspots in Nigeria, and how do you think this has contributed to the growth of our GDP?
Well, presently, as we speak, we know that tourism attracts certain elements. Or let me put it this way. If you have certain elements in place, it will attract tourism. It will attract tourists. Primarily, first and foremost, is security. People will naturally gravitate towards geographical places that are secure. So when we're looking at destinations, we have several across the country. However, the ones that seem to be thriving now in places where there seem to be security, and that's in the Southwest. We have Tourists coming in. Everybody, of course, has been shouting Dirty December. In the South, we have Calabar. Of course, we know it's Calabar. It's over years they've done pretty well, except for a bit of a law during certain governments that just went by. But they're picking it back up. Akwa Ibom is really right now. They're doing a lot to attract tourists. Um, we are meant to, when we go towards the north, we're meant to have major tourist destinations. But because, again, the issue of security, we know that we are having challenges. But when you come to the southwest, we also have the Osun Osogbo festival every year. Some new festivals are coming up in the southwest. Uh, and of course, we know that as we go along, we'll begin to see new tourist destinations. Lagos is supposed to be doing extremely well. We have the slavery enclave, which presently we should be developing. We should preserve those very ancient landmarks. And of course, the connection, transportation, the connection nodes is very important. People will go to places where the roads are good, where there's infrastructural development. So we're looking forward to the building, the finishing of the road that goes to Badagry from Lagos. And that will definitely open up the Badagry axis, which is quite important for our tourism. So we still, again, business tourism. Nigeria primarily is known for business tourism. So a lot of business people are coming in. But when we look at it, there's so much yet to be developed. But we're working on it. We're working on it.
Talk about so much needed to be done. In what area specifically would you say we have not yet tapped enough, or we need to improve on what we're doing there?
Yeah, firstly, let me again go back to the gentleman in terms of growth. As 2022, Nigeria, the tourism sector contributed about 3.6% to the GDP. When we're looking into 2025, we're expecting about $1.67 billion for that sector, which is an annual growth of about 11.8%. 11.81% thereabouts. One thing we should know is that tourism is not an accident. We take tourism as if it's an accident. We take it as if it's arbitrary. So we can just have tourism without planning, and that's an issue. So when we're looking at what we need to do, we need to go back to the drawing board. We have some bit of challenges between coordination between the public sector and the private sector. And of course, even in the public sector, we have issues of coordination between the federal government and the state government because of certain laws or certain constitutional issues that needs to be now sorted out. But we have to build from foundation. We don't have a solid foundation when we look at tourism. We talk about frameworks, and we talk about across the states. We talk about classification and standards, standardizing our hospitality sector, our hotels, and a whole lot of stuff. But we have to take it from the beginning, from the starting context. There's a foundation that needs to be built. And then when we look at the foundation, we build the foundation very well, regulations. The industry is relatively unregulated. We can't, yes, we don't want over-regulation, but at the same time, we can't leave it just for anybody or just for anyone to just come into the industry and do what they wish. And those are some of the challenges we're facing right now. We have to get back to the books, and we have now not just to have, not just to have policies, but to begin to seek to implement these policies. We have certain laws that govern the practice of tourism. We are not effectively utilizing those laws. The states, of course, we know that the states have a strong part to play when it comes to tourism. The states, except for some few states that are tourism-centric, most of the states that have, great tourism products are not really looking at it deeply. Tourism is a sector that can immediately impact on the lower rung of the economy. everybody relatively can benefit from tourism. And so far, we're still belittling the issue. So there's a lot to do, and I hope that we'll get with it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, my mind just went to when you were talking about Calabar, and I remember vividly the administration that started the Calabar Festival, and on few occasions I watched it on television, and it was no different from what was happening in Brazil and some other climes in Europe, and how the day the landscape, the environment, just for the purpose of that carnival and that festival would be created. And I begin to wrap my mind around the economic activities that will be taking place in that day. And I see that the private sector seems to have a lot of responsibility on its table to provide some form of consultancy services to the government so the government can create the right ecosystem for tourism business to thrive. Now, how do you think that since the Nigerian government has been talking about diversifying our economy, how do you think the government can take advantage of tourism, or in what ways can we see tourism as an instrument to diversify the Nigerian economy?
Okay, thank you for that question. The first thing we need to understand is that tourism is broken into certain parts, into a few parts. Presently, we are meant to have a tourism ministry. However, we know what happened just recently. We know we had a tourism ministry, then we had another ministry for arts and culture. So what literally happened was the tourism ministry was literally collapsed. It was shut down. And now I think it's called arts, culture, and tourism. However, I see a disconnect even with that particular setup in itself, because tourism basically subsumes every other aspect of travel, transport, accommodation, lodging, feeding. And so we cannot say arts and culture. We can't put the wrong foot first. It has to be just tourism. And then we now have, under tourism, we now have all these other departments of tourism, hospitality and all under the Department of Tourism. So the first thing is we have to get it right at that level, first and foremost. Now, if we do get it right at that level, then we begin to look at standardizing practice in all these other aspects of tourism. Tourism is practically a hands-on project, if I may put it like that. It's a hands-on, economic tool that can really grow the economy and grow the economy pretty fast. So it's first and foremost in the arrangement. Then secondly, I see a lot of, I think there's between the private and the public sector, we seem not to be working together as we ought to work together. We're having situations where the public sector seem to think that they are the ones that are supposed to spearhead the tourism drive for Nigeria. And I think that is not exactly correct. What they're supposed to, of course, do for us is to have a regulatory framework that we can work with, a well-supervised regulatory framework. And that regulatory framework must touch every aspect of tourism. It must touch transport. It must touch hospitality. Definitely, it must touch, the tourist destinations itself. It must touch security and all those aspects of tourism. And then when we can rightly sit down without the thought at the back of our minds that one part threatens one another and one part wants to overdo one another, then we can sit down and talk together. We have been, we consulting as hospitality and tourism consulting has been existing in Nigeria for close to 30 years or more. I cut my teeth about 25 years ago with a consulting company called Sapphire Hotels Limited. And of course, we know that we have the experts here that can actually make Nigeria one of the most preferred tourist destination countries in Africa. But we still are begging for that thing that is called collaboration, for us to come together and collaborate so that we can actually take this to the next level. So I would say that I'll use this platform to basically appeal to all tourism stakeholders that it's again time for us to sit together, particularly the minister for arts, culture, and tourism. I think we're pushing the primary core aspect of tourism to the backyard. We seem to be talking of arts, culture. We seem to be talking of all these other aspects that are supposed to branch out of tourism. So if we don't get it rightly in terms of the way it's structured, then there's no how we're going to be able to work seriously towards making sure that this is well developed. It's growing, but it's skewed. The growth is skewed. It's not an accurate growth. And we need to understand this. Then, secondly, when we're looking at the issue of capacity building, we have a lot of young people that are interested in tourism. Every day we see them, but coming to that place to now harness the strength of the youth in tourism, again, is made difficult because of this lack of proper regulatory framework. So we're seeing best practices. We're dealing with issues of best practices in the tourism industry that we can, at this stage, we're really working to see that we match what we see across the earth, you know. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and we are appealing to those that have the authorization to ensure that this works well to work with us.
Okay, so let's look at how Nigeria is doing in tourism in Africa. Now, if we look at the top 3 countries that are top earners from tourism in Africa, we wouldn't find Nigeria there. We'd find Egypt, Morocco, and South Africa. These are the top 3 earners from tourism in Africa. When you were talking about the collaboration between the public and the private sector, and the private sector, what they're doing. Now, we know that one thing that makes for a good tourist center or attraction is the unique natural attractions. If we take that out, every other thing around tourism seems like, they're just trying to branch out or provide other aspects of tourism. But part of the main reason a tourist would set out to visit the place are the natural attractions. We have a lot in Nigeria, but regarding maintenance, what are we doing to keep those natural attractions the way they used to be, or even improve the tourist experience around there?
Well, it's I want to say again, we know the challenges we have regarding maintenance. We lack a maintenance culture. And it's a cry in the heart of every genuine tourist practitioner that we need to now look at our tourist products, our tourism products, our tourist destinations. And then we need to now begin to preserve. Preservation is extremely critical. We don't preserve these products. We neglect them. Look at what happened to Obudu Cattle Ranch. It just fell apart within a period of 2 governments. Look at if you have the opportunity to come to Lagos and you go to Badagry, the first story building is out there. I mean, I don't think it has been preserved. The point of no return, where slaves used to be taken out back in the slavery days. I don't think all those places have been preserved. If you look at, even in downtown Lagos, the old Brazilian architecture, a lot of those things have not been preserved, not to talk of Yankari Game Reserve. What has happened to our festivals in the north that we grew up with those festivals? I mean, a lot of these things, we have issues in making sure that we keep them the same way that, or we try to ensure that these places are places of interest that people want to visit. What about media communications? How much do we market these tourist destinations? Look at what happened recently in France, when that old church that got burnt, I think it was 2 years ago, in a period of 1 year, that brought it back to life. and people are going there now to again, it's creating a lot of opportunities for for tourism. So I think this is the time that we really need to look deeply into what the way we work. I see a lot of states, governors that need to understand one thing. They are always, what we always hear is generating IGR, generating IGR. Tourism is a sector that can definitely generate a lot of IGR, internally generated revenue for governments. So they should concentrate on tourism. They should, in their budgets, tourism should be one of the areas which the budgets for the states or should be the highest. So we need to really understand that, like we always say, that tourism is a low-hanging fruit. We really need to take it very, very seriously. There are a lot of countries that what they live on is tourism revenue. Gambia lives, they only have tourism, they live on tourism revenue. Egypt, like you mentioned, the tourism revenue is one of the things they exist on. Morocco is a fast, I mean, it's possibly right now, after South Africa, or even right now, Morocco is doing extremely very well. Of course, we know in the East, in East Africa, we know that everybody has heard of Masai Mara out there in Nairobi, around the Nairobi area, and people every day are flocking into those tourism destinations. So we really need to take it seriously. It can really help the man on the street, the revenue that will come into the man on the street, the taxi driver, the bucaterias, all those places. See what happened at Dirty December. People were making humongous amounts of money during Dirty December. It touched every aspect of social and economic life. And so I want to say that it's time for us to actually wake up and not be a sleeping giant anymore, like we observe.
Okay. Now, in your perspective, which of these countries in Europe and of course in Africa, I know you've mentioned a few, in Europe that has the best tourism model that Nigeria can emulate? And what are these examples that we should emulate in terms of policies and other elements that made it, the destination of the world when it comes to tourism, how the government can tap into this for economic and development purpose? Which of the countries should the government of Nigeria be emulating?
We need to look at France. France is the most visited country in the world right now. We definitely have to look at Spain because of the influx of tourists from the northern part of Europe and other parts that come down when the weather begins to change, when it begins to get cold. Now, one thing I need to mention is that France just recently hosted the Olympics, and you can imagine how they were able to build infrastructures within a short period of time, and to also coordinate that major event, global event, and everything literally went smoothly. So when we look at France, we want to look at their transportation system. We want to look at the hotels. Hotels are extremely important, where people are going to live, where people are going to stay. Tourism basically has to do with, leaving your primary area, your base, to go somewhere else, to go for whatever purpose. And you have to sleep in a place. You have to eat. You have to, of course, do your business. But when we look at our hotels, we do not have enough hotels compared to some of these places. And so we need to look again into the hospitality sector. We need to, of course, we have the hotel industry is beginning to boom. We are having made a lot of projects. For instance, hotels in the pipeline for 2024. We have about 50 branded hotels that are in the pipeline for 2024, with an addition of about 7,622 more rooms, which is about 47.8% of what Africa should be looking at for 2024. And of course, when we look around, we see that the hotel sector is developing pretty fast. We're also working to build capacity so that we can have enough staff for these hotels. We always say that if we have a major event now in anywhere in Nigeria, let's imagine we have an event in the MICE sector and we're looking at about 10,000 people coming in. We don't have enough hotels to accommodate that type of number. Regulations, again, when we look again at that particular subsector of tourism, it's largely unregulated. So we see all manner of, the hotels that are coming up that don't meet the standard, don't meet the quality that is required. So we need to look into that. We need to talk, the states have to take this up because it's one of their major responsibilities to do that. We need to make sure that hotels are properly designed, the architectural designs are properly done. We need to make sure that all the infrastructures are well built. And we need to basically ensure that we do this and we take it from bottoms up. We build a proper foundation for it, and then we begin to grow along that. And we need to get the right people in the right places. We play politics with the tourism sector. We just look for a politician to be the tourist minister or a politician to be the tourism commissioner, without understanding that this is a very technical aspect. It's highly technical. It's a technology in itself, and you must be a practitioner. You must have been schooled in the art of tourism practice. You can't be a hospitality consultant or be a hospitality manager, be managing in the hospitality sector, and you have not been educated in hospitality. And when I'm talking of education, we still have issues with the way our colleges, the curriculum that we look at. We have issues with teaching. We don't have adequate teachers. We don't have well-grounded teachers. And we need to work on these things. So we have products that are coming out of our universities and coming out of our polytechnics that don't even, they are not well groomed, well taught. So we still have to take them back to the basics and all these things. So it's something that we have to get the right people. We have the right people. Some of us have been in this business for well over 40 years, both at home and abroad. And we know the business. It is not until when we get experts from outside Nigeria to come and do this for us. We already have the experts in Nigeria, and it is time for us to engage the right people to do what they know how to do best.
Talking about doing what we know how to do best, you've highlighted a number of very critical issues that we should look at and tackle in the tourism industry. One of them was the local festivals that used to attract people in Nigeria. Now, we used to have the Argungu Festival, which is one that draws a lot of people to the north area where they watch the fishing festival. Why do you think those festivals are declining? Is it a matter of local participation or local sponsorship? What is the role of the local communities in tourism development?
Very good question. What exactly is wrong that all these festivals seem to be dying off? First and foremost, are we marketing them? I can't remember the last time I saw anything about the Argungu Festival being marketed. If it's still holding. That's the first thing. But when we look at other countries, one of the things we see is that they're not more safer than Nigeria, so to speak. South Africa is not safer than Nigeria. I travel to South Africa all the time, and I know it's not more safer. But in terms of the fact that we seem to, again, think that money is supposed to be shared. Everybody wants to share money. We're like a rentier nation. There's what is called Omonile syndrome. Omonile just sells ancestral lands, and just squanders the money. That's the mentality, and the same mentality in tourism, So we've basically lost it. Can you imagine what it will attract? Now, we talk security. Can't we think out of the box? Yes, there's a box, but we can think out of the box. What's the purpose for the civil defense? I just recently proposed to a particular state that you can actually get what we call tourism police by using the civil defense, by using what we have on ground. That we can actually deploy civil defense to basically give protection to all these festivals, these events, tourism destinations, and build security around it and shout it. Okay? People will definitely, Agingo Festival, it's exotic. People are looking for something exotic. People are looking for something that is totally, I mean, out of, out of we call them purple cows, something out of the norm. They want to see it. I mean, what has happened to Osun Osogbo? I mean, it's like it's dying off. We're not marketing this. Look at the festival in Ijebu, the Ojude Oba. We need to shout it more. It's again, it's I don't know what language or how to define these things. It's totally out of this world. We go to festivals. There was a time I went to Germany for a particular festival. The Rhine River is usually celebrated once in a year. And so along the Rhine River, Nuom, there's certain towns along the Rhine River. It's an ancient festival, and they see the way they plan these festivals. You see the way they make sure that they involve all the locals in this festival, and they make a lot of money from it. And when you look at the event calendar for the year, you see people come from all over the world for that particular festival. We can do the same with our festivals. When was the last time we had Eyo in Lagos? I know Eyo is not, Adamorisha is not something that we just do every time. But there must be we must look at it that if we have Adamorisha like once every 2 years, there'll be a reason for Adamorisha. You get what I'm saying? People are going to flock into it, So we still I don't know why we're drawing back. We need to do more. If we know that we have issues with security, then let's work on it. Let's do what we ought to do regarding it. If we know we have issues with infrastructure, let's look at where the tourism destinations are. Let's build the good roads to those places. Let's situate aerodromes or airports close to these places. Let's build Nigeria doesn't have a world-class convention center. We don't have one. And and that business is a $3 trillion business yearly, the mice industry. With Africa just attracting just 2% of that particular industry. So when we look at it, we need to wake up. It seems as if we are doing it arbitrarily. We're taking it here and there. There's no master plan. Right now, there used to be a master plan in the days of Pada Silva. In the days of President Obasanjo, we had a master plan for tourism, for the tourism sector. We never implemented that master plan. Now, I don't think we have, now when the issue of the contention between states and the federal, has come to this point where the federal government doesn't have oversight of tourism. Which state, or what are the states working on? What is the basis of their tourism development and growth? Lagos State has a master plan. I was one of those that sat on the committee to produce the Lagos State master plan in the days of Governor Ambode. But is the master plan being followed? We are again doing things arbitrarily without looking at the basis. It's a master plan. It's a plan. It's an ecosystem. We need to understand that. It's not something you just do arbitrarily. And I think if anybody that really cares about tourism, that's in place of authority, and is a major decision maker in any of the states or anywhere, should be listening to this.
Okay. When you were talking, you made mention about government shouldn't just appoint people or politicians to occupy position, most especially when it comes to tourism, and that there are practitioners in the industry who are quite vast in the knowledge to manage the sector in a way that will yield more profit to the government. And you also alluded to training. In the Nigerian education curriculum system, putting into thought the university and the colleges of education or the polytechnics, as the case may be, some of them offer these courses, but it doesn't appear like those people who offer those courses in tourism and culture and arts seems like they want to practice in that domain. Probably they went to the university for a different course and they couldn't meet up with that cutoff mark, and they were given tourism and management. So what advice would you have for probably the Nigerian Universities Commission or maybe the government in trying to make sure it regulates and put policies in place so that we can bring in the right eggs into that industry to function in a way that is profitable to the Nigerian economy?
The first thing that I observed is that the universities at one point woke up to think that tourism or hospitality and tourism is lucrative, and they can make money from getting an influx of students coming to that particular field. And because in my own days, that our profession, if you're going to be a professional and you're going to study tourism and hospitality, there was no university that was offering that program. It was only offered by the polytechnics. It was offered by the polytechnics because they're hands-on. It's not theoretical practice. I mean, it's not theory. There's very little that has to do with theory when it comes to tourism and hospitality practice. It's more hands-on. And so it was being handled by the polytechnics back in those days. By virtue of some of the positions that I've had the privilege of holding, presently I'm the industry head of the Department of Tourism and Hospitality at the University of Abuja. What we see is that first and foremost, it seems as if NUC is a bit confused, because if you go to each university, different universities that offer the program, you find out that the nomenclature for the program itself is different in every place. Some are even talking of home economics and tourism, or something that doesn't, So we find out that even in that aspect of developing curriculum, the right people are not being involved, not to talk of in the teaching aspect of it. And even when we have teachers, how much of capacity have they built for them to be teachers of tourism? Then tourism, when you look at tourism in colleges, it's not a cheap program. It's very expensive to set up a tourism and hospitality department. Okay? So where will the funding come from? Because most of the students cannot afford to pay for this program because it's practice-oriented. You have to have practical sessions for your cookery classes. You have to have this. The college itself must have what we call a demonstration hotel, relatively. If you look at where tourism, all these things are being properly done. They must have some kind of guest house. It must be well equipped. We're talking of industrial equipment for the kitchen. We're talking of, standard equipment for the bedrooms and all the things that are necessary to teach this properly. We're talking of students that are offering that particular course, tourism in itself, having the opportunity to travel to other places to see tourism products and a whole lot of these things. So it's expensive in itself. So what we now have is when we have students that come in, one of the things that they usually will lack is what is called the passion for tourism. So that's where we're having some of these things that we see. So right from school, that passion for tourism must be imbibed. That's what we call the spirit of tourism, or the spirit of hospitality, so to put. Now, hospitality itself, it's not something you wake up and you think you want to do. Hospitality itself is life in itself. Hospitality in itself, it's a spirit. Hospitality is a spirit. You must first of all receive the spirit of hospitality before you can practice tourism and practice it and practice it properly and practice it well. And so when we're looking at these things, we need to really, really sit down and know first and foremost what is the nature of tourism in itself. But in Yoruba language, they call it alejo. You want to entertain visitors. You want to accommodate visitors. What should be your mindset when you are accommodating visitors? How should you prepare for visitors? What kind of environment must you create for visitors who come for one thing or the other? What about leisure? How do you entertain them? What about food? What kind of meals are you going to make sure that they have? You know, we're talking of issues. Hygiene, food safety is huge. Is huge. Hygiene is critical. We're having issues with HS and E. You know, I was just listening in a bit to the last program on drugs. Food is the major drug. What is the quality of the food we serve in our hotels? When we're talking of food in itself, food safety, we totally neglect food safety in the industry. Totally neglect food safety in the industry. So when you're looking at the quality of our products, when you're talking of capacity building, we still have to get it right. Universities should emulate University of Abuja, and I've seen a need to bring industry to connect with academia. We need to utilize and use that. I mean, that practice, that principle, or that strategy had been used in the Western world for many years. When we bring those that are experts in a particular industry, we bring them into our learning environment so that they can interact with academia, and then they work together to produce quality professionals in the field. But sometimes you find out that academia is always, for some reason, they're always afraid of industry. They don't want to collaborate with us. And we have so much that we can bring in. And the primary focus should be the quality of the student. The quality of the student that we produce in our universities and in our polytechnics. So I think this is what we need to now begin to look strongly and deeply into.
Thank you so much, Adedayo Adesugba, the Vice President, Association of Tourism and Hospitality Consultants in Nigeria, for speaking with us this morning on World Tourism Resilience Day. You've spoke brilliantly about the tourism sector. We do hope that the collaboration that Nigeria's tourism sector needs, it will get, so that while the private sector are doing theirs, it will be complementary effort towards what the government is doing to push the tourism sector forward.
Thank you for having me, and have a pleasant day ahead.